Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to another episode of the Serene View. I'm Serene Singh, your host, and today with me is the man that I broke up with the last time, Mr. Denis Barnard. So, those of you who may have remembered, Dennis and I were supposed to have this conversation a month and a half ago, and then the internet providers in his country decided that no, it's not happening. And so we had to break that up, and now we're continuing the conversation. So, Dennis, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, yes. I'm a sort of refugee from corporate life about 20 years ago. I've been a remote worker for 20 years. Um, I specialized really in HR and HR tech for many, many years. What you might call a corporate survivor in a way. So I look at a lot of business elements and say, how could we do them better with technology? And we'll find out perhaps today why some of the problems we encounter in business actually occur. Well, let's hope we do.
Yes. So today we are really talking about conspiracy to mediocrity. What is this conspiracy that we have? Okay, so let's put it this way. Okay, do you think that your organization is helping you towards excellence, towards greater performance, or do you think that your organization is helping you towards mediocrity? So, Denise, would you like to explain to us why do you think, what's behind this contention that organizations are really keeping us mediocre rather than helping us excel?
Yeah, yes, I do recall earlier, some months ago, you picked up on this conspiracy of mediocrity, which I've been advocating some time, and put me on the spot and said, "Okay, talk about it." So here we are. I think I'd like to drive down about 4 different lanes on this one. I think the people we choose, the infrastructure of the organizations, and 2 or 3 other things as well. So let's start with the people we recruit. I think it's fairly clear that managers don't hire people better than them. Only good managers do, and there's quite a few of them, but the majority will tend to hire people of a lower caliber because they don't want to be threatened. It's all psychological, really. I can remember the number of times I rang up an agency after a job interview and they said, "Oh, no, 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 no. The manager said this guy could do my job. So I don't want anybody that good, or they're overqualified, or whatever." So we immediately start by recruiting people of a lower caliber than the ones we've got already. Do you agree
I
with
just
that,
want to
Serene?
interrupt you there and ask you this, right? Okay, so a lot of managers are probably listening to this and going like, no, that's not true. I don't deliberately hire somebody that is, worse than me. That's on like, it happens in some like backwater country, maybe not in my firm.
Yeah, well, the backwater country, I don't know. You want to call the UK the backwater country? I think I heard that. I heard that more times in the UK than I've heard anywhere else. The whole idea of hiring people better than you is anathema in many places. I had a very good assistant once, and another manager said to me, "Why are you letting her go around, all the managers and doing that stuff you should be doing, talking to the manager? You shouldn't be leaving that to an assistant." I said, "Well, she's perfectly capable of doing it. Why shouldn't I? That allows me to get on with other stuff." So, the whole attitude in a way, that sort of comes back to the structures, doesn't it? The hierarchical structures that we have. These are not so much, as people would say, these are about the lines of responsibility. They are the lines of blame. Uh,
Can I do this? Let's do this first, okay? I know there's quite a few of you online with us. Put it into the comments, right? Do you really think that your manager, okay, if you're working, then you probably are not going to admit that, they hire someone worse than them. But have you seen this in the organization? I mean, do you see people hiring, people that are worse than them and never hiring people that are more than them? Oh, well, we already have one. Ashley says it is totally possible, but she's not sure that it is deliberate. Okay. So it's totally possible that they do it, but it's not deliberate. It's something.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if somebody actually admits that they're good enough to do your job, they will pass you on by saying, "Oh no, you're too qualified. You'd leave in 6 months." In which case, my question would be, why haven't you left in 6 months if it's so damn boring? I mean, there's an answer to all of this. I think Angie is right in one sense, is that there's something subconscious going on. Maybe not deliberate. Maybe they'll find excuses, but it happens. I'm sure it's a natural. It's a human reaction, isn't it? They'll justify with some story why the candidate was wrong, says Colin. And they'll move on. Yes, exactly. Not enough challenge. We're talking about the same job that the hiring manager is doing, and obviously the challenge is too big for them. Because they're still there trying to do it.
But I really wanted to ask this, right? Like, why am I am the one who come to you for a job, right? And if you think that this job is not enough challenge for me, or it is not engaging enough for me and so forth, well, I am the one making the choice to come and apply for that job. It's as though, are you second guessing my judgment as a human being? Look, Colin has had the same experience as you, not being hired because someone was scared of his experience. Come on, Colin, it's because of your ability. You know this, right? You're even good looking. What are you going to do?
I think Colin and I share a very rebellious nature, or perhaps just a tendency to tell it like it is. To say, I don't think this job has enough challenge, actually, if you're working for somebody who says that, then the job is not very good. And it means the line manager doing it is not very good. And as Colin says, they'll find excuses. You're overqualified, or the job's not enough challenge and so on. And indeed, as has been said to me, no, well, they said to the agency, this guy can do my job. Okay, so why don't I? You can move on to a new challenge.
No, but I wanted to say this as well, right? Which is, I think that instead of going around bashing, I mean, like what Angeli says, even when we hire people that's better than a manager, we don't unleash their capabilities for a number of reasons. And I honestly think that she's got a point, because I feel that, yes, we can bash a couple of bad managers who are just out there to hire bad people. There are those types. Let's just agree on that, not right now. But I think a lot of the times vilifying individuals is not solving the problem, because a lot of the times it is, as you say, structural. There is something structurally wrong with the organization. And people come in, even we hire them, they're better than the managers, and yet they are not given the chance to be the kind of people they are. And Colin is denying that he's good looking. No, go ahead. Yes. Go ahead.
I think there's this old saying about we want wild geese and then make them fly in formation. When we're hiring, we want the best possible person we can get. Technically, we want that. When we actually got them, we don't want them racing around all over the place, innovating and doing stuff. We actually want them to get on the treadmill and become part of the scenery. That's why we all know that halo effect when we start a new job. We're given everything. What do you need? Let's do it. Yes. 6 months on, you're a piece of the furniture. Nobody sees your novelty anymore, and you're just a part of the background. So, yes, we say we want to hire the best people. We go to every possible length to find the best people. But actually, what we want them to do is when they come in, We want to grind them into shape so they fit nicely into that little hole in the organization that we made for them. Okay, Angie, go slow.
Yes, so Angie says
go fast.
she keeps hearing that you should go slow to go fast. And this is in Silicon Valley, right? I'm like shocked. Is that what if even they say that, what hope is there for the rest of us, right? And they tell people to slow down on their ideas and capabilities. I mean, if the one place on earth that I thought would be, go, have more ideas, do more innovations.
Yeah, no, they're not. I mean, Silicon Valley has proved itself very dinosaur in some of its attitudes to remote and so on working. So I wouldn't take what Silicon Valley says as gospel any more than I would what Wall Street says as gospel. No, I think, what do we actually want? I mean, it says we want to take on bright people and we want them to do the job and we want them to do more than the job. Otherwise we just hire some dull person who's going to do the same job as the previous one. We need to, what is the object of all this? Why do we actually go to work? Do people work for corporates so they can climb a greasy corporate ladder? In order to do that, I would suggest that you have to sublimate your capabilities. Because once you start on that track, climbing up the ladder, you're now in an extra game. It's not about ability, it's also about politics. And that's why the structures start coming into it. High potential people can be challenging to manage. Yes, Colin. And I always had a bunch of mavericks in my department. They were they were usually rejects from other departments, but I thought they were bright. So I gathered together this mutinous crew of people.
So you're Professor X, basically.
Yeah, they are a challenge to manage because they're always asking questions. Most managers hate people to go because that means their lives are disturbed. So what am I going to do? I'm going to find another one and put them in this templated hole where this job's supposed to be done. I don't want anybody bright,
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you and ask you this, right? Which is, maybe not just you, but the rest of you who are listening to this. I want to know what exactly. I mean, why do you go to work? Do you go to work to find fulfillment? Do you go to work for a paycheck, right? I mean, I just want, just give me the box. I'll sit in the box and tell me what you want me to do, and I'll do it, and that's the end of it, right? Honestly, because here we are talking about structural and talking about organizations keeping people down. But is it fair to pin it on the organizations? Because I know many people who just tell me, this is just a job. I just want to come here, get it done, and go home to my hobbies and to my family.
Well, let's see what people say.
I would love to hear. Okay, so those of you who are online, just type it in. I mean, what do you go to work for? Is it just for a paycheck? Is it actually to create something? Because I know certainly, Denis, probably you are there, to change the world. Colin, I'm sure is going to change the world. He's trying anyway. But is that true of everyone on the call? I mean, do most of you just want a job, and are organizations then set up for people to just do what they want to do? Okay, so Mike says that he just because he has a mouth to feed.
Yeah,
is to feed his family. Yeah. Yes.
I think I'll just give a little bit of details of this. In one job, I had a sort of team of people, which in a newish job, I had a team of people. I assembled them all. I was talking about this, that, and the other. And my very capable assistant at that time said to me afterwards, "You're saying most of the wrong things to these people. I can tell you that most of these people are not interested. They have no aspirations. They're doing a job. It doesn't tax them enough. And they just want to roll up, pick up the money and go. You're talking to them as if they all had these aspirations to do great things." So,
No, but look at this, right? I mean, Mike, yes, he wants to feed. He just wants to feed his family. Fair enough. Ashley wants to have an impact. And yes. Tiffany, I believe, wants to contribute to making the world a better place. So I guess people go to work for all kinds of different reasons. And isn't the structure of an organization meant to kind of accommodate all of these people. And so what if,
yeah.
I guess my argument is, so as a result, is to keep, shall I put it as keep the boat from rocking? Because if you have high potential people rocking the boat, innovating, living their full potential and their ideas and capabilities, then what about all the other people,
Well, if you
What
think
about the
about it,
minds?
the structure, if you like, is actually designed to keep you doing what you're supposed to be doing, and not to do anything, do anything outside of those parameters. So if you're say you're in the accounts department and you see something and you go to the operational department and say, don't you think this could be done in a different way because it's causing a lot of problems here? And they'll say, oh, thanks very much. And then do nothing because they're not interested. They're looking at that little piece that says, this is your job. So the idea, I mean, it can work in a startup. Obviously, when you have people multitasking, it's a wonderful moment. But within a structured organization, and I do remember when we were talking about this another time, that you reminded me very, very well of the Peter principle, where we actually have the Peter principle says that people are promoted to the limit of their capabilities. And that's where they rise to this point. They're never going to rise anymore because they're not capable anymore.
So I'm not sure what's this mad about jewelry. Thanks so much. They say most people go to work for the income.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
very few people go to work like actually to make a impact or to make the world a better place like Tiffany. Most people just work for an income, and
Yeah,
therefore most organizational structure are structured to accommodate them. Now, as I said,
exactly. Yeah.
I guess from an HR point of view, I feel sad about it because I think of it as this way, right? How much human potential are we wasting in organizations
Huh?
simply because the setup is like this, right? Which is organization gives you work that is, how would I put it? When we say work, we seldom say work. We say, oh, well, it's work, and it's set up to give you that and then pay you for your pains.
Mm.
And then a workforce that is set up to accept that as their lot. I've got to put in X number of hours so I can get the money to enjoy jewelry for a start, or whatever else it is that I enjoy. And when I look at that and I ask myself, is that a complete waste of human potential around the world? My answer can only be yes, because that's what I believe as a HR professional. And my question is, oh, actually, before I go on to my question, I wanted to ask you, you have two more factors, right? And we've only talked about two. You actually have four factors. Do you want to go through all the problems first before we talk about what can be done about structure?
Well, I mean, I think we just let it roll along. I mean, that's one thing that the HR people, if people are going to work for the money, and I don't blame them because, the economic system of this world is devised to keep everybody working all the time. So if somebody just wants to rock up and do their job, even though they have immense potential to change the world, that's their decision. And we as professionals may say, oh my goodness, what a waste of talent. But actually, this person is actually doing what they feel they need to do. So, and when you start saying that you've got a whole bunch of people like these in the workforce, and then we start talking about engagement and talent. So, what would you say? All my workforce, yes, talent management. Well, when you've actually got a percentage of this is actually using the talent, and the other percentage is actually just turning up and taking the money. That's not talent. And then people, HR people, directors everywhere, tearing their hair out about engagement. I have to tell you, if somebody's sole aim is to turn up, do a decent job, and get a wage, you're going to have hell's own job trying to get them engaged, aren't you? I mean, let's face it. I mean, a street vendor of hot pies in Bogota is doing it to make a living. If I go along and say, how engaged are you in this work? They're going to say, look, Jack, don't ask me stupid questions. I'm doing this to live. And I think that's more or less what's happening when all of us so-called professionals come down sort of measuring stuff and that saying, how engaged are you? How are you feeling today? I'm feeling pretty crappy, actually. I mean, I think
let's hear it from the people online. Like, put it in the chat. How has all this feel about it? Do you feel there's not another terrible HR initiative, or do you feel that no, yes, I would love to be engaged? Like engage me. I like these initiatives. What is your sentiment on this engagement?
They're not engaging.
They're not engaging us. Yes, first we need to give you an engagement survey, guys. If you click the left mouse button, you're gonna get that. Yes. Yes. We need to send you a 30-question engagement survey to measure engagement level so that we can better engage you. But honestly, right? I mean, do you feel it's of any use at all as the recipient of that engagement survey?
No.
Okay, so Madam Jewelry says it's unreal. She feels that, I mean, I'm interpreting here, but I guess it will be that you feel HR is out of touch with the reality of work. Is that what you're trying to convey?
I would suspect that mad about jewelry, I would imagine, is probably an independent business person. So they would definitely see it from that point of view. I would say one thing about engagement. If you are the HR director of conglomerates or whatever with like 24,000 employees, the actual span of involvement from people on the lower rungs is very, very wide to those on the upper rungs. The people in the top of the organization are on fantastic bonus schemes and God knows what else. The people down below are not engaged because they don't see what they are actually physically doing, checking invoices or whatever it is. How does that affect what the business is doing? You can't expect to engage people unless you explain what the heck they're doing there. And that's why it's so much easier in independent organizations, because they have a stake. Now, if the only stake you've got in an organization is in exchange to giving up your time from 9 to 5 is so many £1,000 a year or whatever, then I don't think you can get people very engaged. You might be able to give them pool tables and table tennis and all this other nonsense that our friends in Silicon Valley believed in. Then, I don't think you're going to get them engaged. Until people actually understand what they're doing in an organization. In a couple of places where I worked, I established a roadmap. Here you are in this great big tangle of an organizational chart. But what you do, if you don't pass this stuff through fast, the accounts department suffer, and this is a disaster, and so on. So you have to show some causality about what they're doing. The whole business of engaging, and this is all your territory, actually, Serene.
No, actually,
I was coming on to culture and all that.
Okay, yes. No, I'm getting more replies. So Leonard agrees. It's useless. Like these HR initiatives, it's just useless. Okay.
I love
yes. Mike says, we have to see how much the employee sees whether this is for them or for the company. Exactly your point, right? I mean, if this is perceived as, something that HR is doing so that they can look good in front of the boss, something that the company is doing to prevent you from leaving so that they can continue to, just keep you within the great resignation, then yes, perhaps that could be an issue.
I don't think HR are doing this to make them look good, because to be honest, the people engage the company, engage the workers, the line managers and the directors. HR doesn't make people engaged. It can enable initiatives that maybe make them engaged, but it has no direct impact. And so,
can I say this, Mike?
Sorry, go on. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, can I say this, Mike, that actually it makes HR look bad. Because I don't know about around the world, but Singapore has one of the lowest employee engagement rates of any country in Asia. We have something like 9% of our employees report being engaged or highly engaged, right? So if we do this kind of surveys, yeah, it really makes HR look very bad, actually. No, but we have many more
Not
comments on it.
HR.
It seems to be some like a big, bear bug for lots of people. So Mark is the guy who does social mindfulness, and he says he talked to his son this morning. He's really fortunate to have found a role in life that has a social purpose. With all of these, what they're doing is just managing some level of endemic anxiety created by modern social conditions. And the only way to release energy when this kind of angst is to find a greater purpose. And
Yes.
actually, that is okay. I don't know whether I will agree with that, but I will say this, right? Like 300 years ago, I mean, we worked on our own farms, we fed our own families. That like no existential, crisis there. Now we go to work in these big faceless organizations. We have no idea what benefit is our work for anything else. And like unlike Mark, who is, for those of you who have no idea what is social mindfulness, you've got to follow Mark, right? Social mindfulness is mindfulness but for good. Okay, that's like mindfulness for evil. But honestly, it's finding this purpose where we don't have it anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure whether you agree with that is true.
I think it is. I mean, today society is more and more structured. The economic situations are actually geared towards more repression of the world citizen. I think that we do need outlets, and this can this can manifest its way in destructive ways as well as constructive. So I really think the low levels of engagement, and I'll tell you what, I bet you the levels are actually going down thanks to our friend the pandemic, because people have actually spent rather more time away from the workplace and all that entails, and have spent a little bit more time at home or in a remote workplace, and they've had time to think. They've actually had time to reflect on what the heck they're doing. And many people, they call it the Great Resignation. That's a soundbite, but I mean, a lot of people are reevaluating. And some people, some really good HR people are calling it the Great Reset, which is one that I would tend to subscribe to. I think people are re-examining what they're doing. And do I really want to spend 3 or 4 hours a day traveling to and from work and so on? So I think there is a big reassessment, a big reevaluation, and that's only going to lead to lower levels of engagement unless the employers start to. They're the guys who have to start the engaging. It's no good going out to a bunch of people slaving away doing something. You say, how engaged are you? How are you feeling today? Because really, they don't give a damn about that. Here we are. Employing
I'm
Colin
going
again.
to I'm going to agree with you, and actually, I'm also showing Colin, who is also agreeing with you. Okay, so one of the things that's happened when we work at home is that we work in front of our kids, and I think a friend of mine, Richard Clayton, has said this, that actually showing the reality of work in front of very young kids is one way that we are rechecking ourselves, right? Because we are doing this in front of our kids. And if this is really soul draining work, is this what we want our kids to see, that we are doing this soul draining work? And exactly like what Colin has said, right? Employer engagement then becomes yet another silver bullet solution to get more out of the employees, right? The relationship becomes purely transactional. People do the minimum that they can get away with. They feel that they have done a fair day's, a fair day's work for their pay, which they feel perhaps they are being underpaid. And then, employers try to do these engagement activities to try and engage them, right? And I think Madam Jury says it really depends on the activity. And I agree with you. How many of us have gone to a team building session and really enjoyed ourselves that half a day or a day, and then go back to work as usual?
Yeah.
I mean,
I've been on the team building.
Engaged?
No, it didn't. No. I think the one thing that probably made me most engaged in my career was like 1,000 years ago. I went on a time management course for a couple of days, and I came back, and that literally changed my life to the detriment of everybody else around me, because I started organizing my time, and people couldn't just rock up and stick their head in and have a chat. I said, "I'm sorry, you haven't blocked off time," but I mean, it did. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't miss that either. The water cooler thing they talk about. It's difficult to engage people because they don't have a stake. What's their stake in the business? We know the directors are on bonuses. If they can flitch out another 5 people out of the organization, save money on the budget, they're going to get a bigger bonus. Now, from that point of view, how are you going to engage people lower down who're just getting a salary? I don't see how that can be done unless if there's no direct line of sight between what they're doing and the company achieving something in the world. Yeah, and
No, I mean, been quite a few comments. Colin has said that the best engagement practice is to actually talk to people and actively listen to them. Let me know if you guys think that is true, right? I mean, should organizations not listening to their people? Are they not talking to their people? Lisa says that she sees that as beneficial for her personal and professional development, as keeping her abreast in workplace cultures. Yeah, so there are some who do think that it is beneficial, right? And Tiffany says, well, there's grassroots. Tiffany, please, can we have less tongue twisting, comments? Just kidding. Grassroots initiatives and top-down forced engagement initiatives.
Yeah.
And that is really, I don't know of many engagement activities that are bottom-up. I think most engagement activities is the boss going, oh, our engagement levels are down. HR, go think of something, right? Transform our culture, increase employee engagement, and ensure that our employee retention is low.
Yeah, I think it. Yeah, and really, it's not HR's job. But apart from that, I mean, HR's
doing a lot of stuff. Look, employee survey.
If you go and ask the employees what they think and talk to them, you will hear things you don't want to hear. And companies, as an entity, don't like to hear bad news. Somebody might say the coffee is terrible in the kitchen. So some bright spark in the management team will say, let's put a better brand of coffee in the kitchen. But when it comes down to saying, I don't like the way the office is laid out, or I don't like my manager, or the directors never talk to me, what you'll then get is the directors going out having a sort of a town hall meeting, which they listen and nod their heads, and they have another one, and then after it disappears. Because it's a fairly well-known fact that employers may even take the steps of listening to the employees, but then actually don't do very much about it. So, the organization is an animal. It's an entity on its own. It's difficult to explain because it's made up of so many elements. But organizations don't like hearing bad news. They don't like hearing about stuff that they're not going to be able, or don't feel inclined to do anything about. They'll say that's the way. And again, that's why, they're bound inside these hierarchies and these ways of working.
I want to say this because I think this is such a scathing indictment of HR, and I think completely agrees with what you've just said, which is HR puts out the engagement surveys, HR seeks employee engagement, creates focus group, and nothing changes. Nothing changes, right? And then they wonder, why does employee engagement go downhill?
Yeah, well, you see, and I think what's happening is when they start listening to the focus groups now, that means something upstream is going to have to change. And that is where your big problem lies, because the people in that don't want things to change because they're going very nicely, thank you. It comes back to human nature's aversion to change, isn't it? I think that's probably at the root of it all. It's about control and it's about change.
I I would argue against that with you, to be frank. I don't think humans have an aversion to change. I think humans have an aversion to change when they don't have a good reason to. I mean, just think about these last 2 years. I just think about the amount of change that globally we have accommodated. Right? But we had a really good reason, right? Change or die. But in organizations, especially for the people on top who are enjoying the benefits of being in an organization, is there an impetus to change? And
I think,
and it's okay. So I just kind of wanted to highlight this. This is another side of the problem, right? Which is they say the UK is quite close to Singapore level, and the problem engagement surveys that is self-reported, right, is higher in the US because they are actually more positive people, and their healthcare depends on them having a job, right? So it's literally a matter of life and death. So is that what it is, right? That we don't want to change, we don't feel engaged because it's not a matter of life and death, right? I mean, it's the people on top are happy that they're enjoying the benefits. The people below are suffering. But hey, we can always change and get a new set of person, run a couple of engagement activities for them, make sure that they don't run too fast.
well, if you examine change, you talk about change to, say, a mid-manager. The mid-manager is actually doing very well in their job. And when you suggest change to them, it means something is going to change. And when that changes, it may mean something worse for them. For that reason, everybody who's in a job that they are doing very well and very comfortable in doesn't want anything to change. And I think, I don't think human beings particularly like a lot of change. Yeah, I leave the furniture where it is I like the way the furniture is in my living room, and then my wife goes and changes it, and oh, why'd you do that? I take a point about why the change, but I mean, there's a whole industry out there devoted to living off the whole fact that organizations need to change. So if you bring in somebody outside to push through a change initiative, you're going to have even less engagement because it won't be seen. It won't be seen as something indigenous to the company. And I think, that, and everybody's change is the word on everybody's lips, and let's face it, I've sat around board tables and said, we haven't had a change initiative for 2 years. Well, you don't necessarily have to have one. Your market conditions may well dictate that to you. You don't, somebody wakes up one morning, the MD wakes up and says, oh, we need a change initiative because I read about it in Managing Director Weekly, and that's what they do. Because that's what they do. Somebody at one of the big five has written a rather sneaky article saying, if you aren't thinking about change, you're all going to die. And then they all panic, don't they? They'll say, get onto HR and say, I need a change initiative, or whatever it is they do. So I think, I think the two factors that I see is about control and change.
No, just interrupt you and say this, which is what you are saying seems to be in opposition to what you've said just now, which is that the leadership doesn't want to change, right? But now you're saying that the leadership is coming with change initiatives. And actually, I have quite a couple of different comments that I was going to just flash. Okay. So yes, Mike really enjoys team building. Thank you, Mike. They talked about how we need visionaries and true leaders. We need people who are aligned, who know what is happening, and who gets the correct resources, right? So actually, I think what it is there's a lot of sense making that we are lacking, and a lot of things are just not making sense at the moment, right? As Warren said, right? If maybe HR should not even send out those surveys if they haven't gotten the buy-in of the leadership to say that yes, we're going to change. Whatever comes out, we are going to do, and we're going to truly listen. And it doesn't make sense to have sent it out, right? Because There's like what you said, this aversion to change being forced, and I think it works both ways, right? So if I am somebody from below giving feedback above to say we need change A, I'm going to get resistance from the top because they're like, why is this being forced on me? Similarly, if Management Weekly has said that you need change B, and from the top, it's forced on to say we need change B, people are actually also going to resist. It's just that perhaps they have less power to resist. But as what we have seen, they are like voting with their feet. They walk off, right? So honestly, I think it works both ways, right? That people don't like being done to, and yet that is the bulk of change initiatives. Somebody initiates, and then it gets like forced into every other part of the organization. And we have every intention to change. Does the action actually follow? I don't know. They say leaders want to actually see the change, but don't want to experience the change themselves. They want an omelette, but they don't want their eggs to use to make it.
Absolutely, and I think that does encapsulate it, because when they talk about change, some directors said, "I think we should run psychometric tests on all new, potential recruits." And I remember saying once, "Well, let's start by running those psych tests on the board and see if they're actually fitting in the jobs they should be, or whatever it is you want to do with it." And no, they don't want the change. I think there's a key point here, actually. I think we are there's a tendency to confuse people in highly paid posts to think they're actually leaders. Most of them are not. I think, the definition of a leader is something different to that of a highly paid director or manager. Leaders, have something natural about them that makes people want to follow, and leaders will engage. And I think just because you're earning a big salary and you've got a big office, you've got a big job title, doesn't make you a leader. And I think that's where the confusion arises. I have to say, I'll tell you this against in my own profession. You go to conferences and things where the HR directors of X, Y, and Z are there telling you about this, that, and the other. But that, just because they're sitting in that, some of them are true leaders and inspirational. Others are very highly paid managers. We need to separate. Now, leaders have a much better chance of motivating because of whatever those qualities are that makes them as a leader. A manager is a person in the hierarchy getting a good salary, and they are not going to threaten that by doing anything, any initiative or anything that might change, that might backfire, might threaten their pension rights. Who knows? So, the definition of the leader, let's throw out this business. Because you're making $250,000 a year or whatever, you are not a leader. Not automatically. So, you got to have qualities. Innovation. The true leader will say, yeah, we do need to change. Let's all get round to talk about how we can do it. The manager is going to say, oh my God, we got to change. Okay. And we're going to, because it's disturbing their world.
I think this is another scathing indictment of HR. Like HR is happy to be invited to the table, so they'll do whatever is asked of them. And if you look at it that way, it's exactly as what you said. There's a lack of true HR leadership because HR is there to kind of, okay, tell us what you want us to do, we'll just get it done, right? Rather than truly thinking about what is the workforce of the future? Do we need to prepare our current workforce to be able to cope in a currently very, a very changed world, very volatile and so forth?
No, absolutely. The HR brief is usually all too limiting. However, I've worked for a couple of really inspirational HR directors, both women, but that's by the by. And both of them had vision. They could see what needs to be done. They could go to the board. They could convince the board we need to do it. So it's proactive rather than reactive. And a lot of HR is reactive by the nature of the definition of HR in the organization. Because I can tell you, nearly every organization has a different view of HR and what it should be doing. And therein lies the problem in a way. I don't want to get into that discussion about HR with a seat at the table, but I have seen truly great HR directors who deserved and got their seat at the table. And I've met a few HR directors who wouldn't deserve a seat at the dinner table, let alone the board table. So,
well, I mean, I think Eric earlier comment, he agreed with you, and it seems like he's met some as well.
absolutely right.
I
Yes.
I want to move the discussion a little bit from, yes, this is all the problems, and we know this is the problems, but what can we do, right? I mean, a couple of comments have come in. The first is, as HR professionals, what do you suggest that people with lower rank, or maybe not say lower, higher rank, but just people who are not HR, people who are just stuck in an organization too? And is there anything at all?
Well, this may sound, a bit naive, but I think you've actually got to go right back to the roots of what is the organization trying to do? And does everybody understand not only what we're trying to do, but how they contribute to it? I'm not saying that's going to make anybody feel any better if they feel underpaid, but at least they may see that what they do has some value, has worth. I'm actually working on a completely different strand right now, talking about how people feel their worth at work is. And people need to feel that what they're doing has some value, because there is a whole, I've met through all the decades of corporate work, a whole strand of people who say, you know what, I'm just going to sit here and do this job till they pay me to go or till I retire. I see what's going on up there. It's just a nonsense, but who's going to change it? Nothing's going to change. I'm going to sit here and do this forever. And yes, it's a waste of waste of resource, shall we say, but not necessarily talent. So I think that we have to, companies, organizations have to go right back to the roots and say, what are we doing? Okay, we make arms and we sell them. Okay, whatever it is, something really unfashionable. But we need to explain what is the mission, and don't put pieces of paper up in reception, because that means nothing. We do this, we believe in this. It's rubbish. They don't believe in any of it. They're just putting it there so we need to actually go back to what is the mission of this organization in the world. What are we trying to do? Okay, so we want to sell widgets, we want to sell machine guns. Let's be honest about it. That's what we're trying to do. So this is the organization. You're the sales arms. We want you to go out there to wherever and sell more arms or pieces, widgets. And to do that, here's the salesperson in the bottom layer of the rung saying, look, the stuff you do is valuable because all those cold calls generate one lead, which leads to a sale. So we value that. Now, a lot of employees will say, you may well value it, but you're not paying me to do it. In other words, I don't get enough money. And that's really a whole different question, because I think the pie in organizations is being very unfairly cut up. If you see the chasm between the top pay and the bottom pay, you just know it's wrong. People are too damn greedy nowadays in corporations. So you have to establish that. But if at least people understand what they're doing and it does have value, we'll come on to the bit about that value. Okay, show me how valuable I am by paying me. But at least they'll say they're doing something that contributes. This whole map of the organization and the interactions that go on between it. And if you don't do the job, these people will suffer. And if you do the job, this is great for the whole thing. So maybe it's a naive approach. I don't know. But I think it's the only way you're going to go right back and try and get the message across. You have value. I don't know if you remember, there was a very good story which stuck with me forever. I read about hundreds of years ago that they asked the guys sweeping in some big like Chicago O'Hare Airport or something, what does your job do? You'll know this one. And he said, I help keep the planes in the air. And he's right. Every little piece that we do has value. It's just that we've lost sight of that. And a lot of that, I'll tell you where that is. That's happened in the top layer because because of that gigantic gap. That tells you one thing: the top layer do not care enough about what happens underneath them, what happens underneath the cocktail deck. They're not interested. That they've allowed it to drift into that situation. And as long as the numbers keep crunching and they keep crunching down the numbers and the head count, they're okay. Well, I think, that's got to change. That definitely has to change.
I wanted to bring this up. I actually asked Leonard, Mark Leonard was a guest a couple of months back, and I asked him to define this social mindfulness. And I think it really fits what you're trying to say, right? Which is really, it's about understanding who we are and how we identify with the organization. Like, what is the meaning of me in this organization? Because then we get to align, right? Align ourselves, align all of us, get together. We have a shared sense of value and therefore then a shared sense of purpose, because otherwise we are not going to function as an organization. And a lot of the things that we need to get done now, something as simple as I once read this: nobody on earth knows how to make a pencil, because that knowledge is so distributed that no one knows, like, from beginning to end, how to chop a tree, how to whittle down a tree, and how to get the lead, how to make the lead, and so on and so forth, until you get a complete pencil. And so if we cannot get this alignment, then that's what's going to happen, right?
I agree with you. I remember one HR job I did. I was making bedroom furniture, the company. And so I took time to look at the big sheets of plywood coming in, following all the processes through to the bedroom cabinets or whatever else coming out the other end. And then when you start looking at the people who use the machinery that do that, I then started analyzing who did what. I found one of the most crucial machines in the operation only had one operator. So we actually need to understand all those little pieces and strands in a business that help to make the final product. So on that, you are absolutely right, and what Mark is saying is totally right. There has to be, I think what has happened is there's been a big democratization of the individual, thanks to things like the internet and the world is a smaller place. Our ideas are getting across. We have better expectations. We have better aspirations as individuals than rather than be a cog in a gigantic machine. And I think, the only way that people have been able to express themselves is generally in a negative way. But I think everybody on this planet now feels that they are part of some ginormous machinery that pays you at one end and takes your money away at the other. And I think that, if we're talking about business, I think we have to come out and talk to everybody who's employed and say, let's talk about what we're doing here and understand and recognize you have value. Let's not be greedy at the top. Let's share the wealth of what's happening.
So firstly, I would just want to, I did put it up just now, what Tiffany has said, right? About a leader being somebody who is doing the work to connect, to influence, to nudge communities towards a brighter future.
Yes.
And I guess the word I want to say is, are we seeing these leaders? Because Warren says that maybe HR should be challenging business leaders. 100%. I will tell you honestly, Warren, just being from HR, that oftentimes HR doesn't have the power to challenge line managers, especially they don't have the power to challenge, say, the CFO, the CEO, even the COO oftentimes. Yeah. Yes, you can get the same title as CHRO. And if you think about it, right, it's so strange because at the end of the day, be it money, be it machinery, be it sales, without the people, would anything actually function, right? And HR being there to support the people should be a really important function, but HR is often a line expense. And
Yeah.
okay, so people are having a slight argument about whether, so Eric says all the great HR directors are women, but Lisa actually feels there are also good HR directors, men. But I actually want to kind of bring this back, right? Which is the question is this: we are, as an organization, I mean, we are maybe not I mean, we're not the CEOs, we're not this, and then we look at the structure, we go, oh, you know, and then you look at HR and you go, HR is not really being very helpful at this moment. What do we do? Honestly, what do we do? I mean, we can tell our people, oh, your work has meaning, but is that really going to make any difference at all?
It wouldn't harm, is what I would say. I think I can dispose of the HR challenging thing in a few lines. HR should challenge, and I think the point that in cases where it has not challenged or doesn't challenge is because HR in many ways has an inferiority complex about its mission. In many organizations, it's not seen and has not promoted itself as a force for change or for whatever. And so they don't challenge because they don't want to rock the boat. Good HR leaders will challenge and say, why are we doing this? Because this puts this at risk, this is not working, and so on. So they should challenge, irrespective of how they see the role in their organization. Because if they don't, and nothing changes, then they're actually a party to this sort of bad situation. So they should challenge if they've got principles. If they just want to turn up and earn the salary the same as everybody else, then fine. But don't declare yourself to be a leader or anything. No. So HR has unfortunately not has not put its stamp on an organization. It needs to. It should be one of the forces, and everybody in a business should challenge. I mean, that's part of the story, isn't it? Don't you think? Don't you think that Toyota, for instance, had so many process improvements?
Listen to yourself. Do you think if you say like everybody in the organization should challenge, right?
Okay.
I am laughing because I can just imagine the horror, right? The utter horror that would, emanate through the levels of the organization. Challenge,
But why not? I was going to say, companies like Toyota made a big thing about process improvements. It was almost demanded, or not demanded, but it was expected. The staff, the employees would suggest free of charge process improvements. Now that is a challenge because it's saying we need a change here. We see doing it for the better, so we challenge it. So there's nothing wrong with that. It wouldn't be a chaos, providing the people above who could actually do something about this are prepared to do it. They don't have to be right all the time. That's why dictator type leaders, command and control, eventually fail because their way of operating means they have to be right 100% of the time, and nobody in this world is 100% right all the time.
Well, Leonard has says, so if the HR department as a whole has no power to challenge, are they being pushed down the oblivion?
It just assumes the power to challenge. Try it. To challenge and challenge in a positive way. Why are we doing it this way? Can we not do it that way? We have low engagement rating. So what are you going to do about it? We suggest you change this. Of course they have the power to challenge. It's down to the individual HR person, isn't it? Some are timid and weak. Some don't want to rock the boat, and others are fire-blazing, trailblazing people. So
he's highlighting a HR director that was very sharp I mean, that they know the strengths and weaknesses of individuals that, and can identify who is worthy of promotion, and increment, and that the company is then able to achieve cohesion, right? So authority actually helps.
That sounds very good, but I would make one comment. It's not up to the HR director to promote people, except in the HR department. It does suggest to me that the line managers weren't as strong as they should have been, because they are the people who should be doing this, should know the strengths of their employees, should be suggesting the promotion. This is the sort of HR interventionism that I'm never very keen on, but if it works, Eric, great. But I mean, that just tells me that the line management might have been weak.
Okay. And one last question, which is challenge for what purpose, right? So Tiffany wants to know, is this, she feels is a good thing, because the organizational paradigm needs a revision, but maybe what it needs is a complete overhaul. I got to say this. You are the, I don't know, fifth or sixth guest in a row that has come on to say the way we do business has got to change. The way we run organizations has got to change. And I think, Colin, if you're still there, Colin has kind of been mentioned on air 3 times because for the last 3 weeks, not 3 times, for the last 3 weeks, because Colin's work is in decrepifying work. And that has come up repeatedly. We need to do this work thing better. We need to, as Colin says, decrepify work.
I'm just wondering, actually, if we shouldn't be decrepifying management, because to my mind, the work is not the problem. It's the way the people who do the work are treated. I know, that's semantics. I know what Colin means, and he's right. But it's not, at the end of the day, it's not the job. Most people enjoy their jobs, to be honest. It's the people who manage them and the place they work in and the rest of it that they didn't really like. So, but yeah, something has to change. And, if enough people turn up and say it has to change, maybe it will. I don't know. Business is very resistant. Big business is trying to set the clock back, saying, hey, working from home isn't good. We want to see you in the office. Come on, go back to traveling on the train or whatever. So, it's resistant and it's up there. It needs to change.
Well, Colin's still here. So I've invited him to tell us more about decrepifying work, Colin. Send us a message. I guess, really, we need to kind of think about it. Mark has a really good comment. He says, we should use a different word than challenge, because challenge implies some kind of adversarial position, which, it triggers threat. They therefore need to think about the skills of applying maybe something like a Socratic style of inquiry, which is friendly, but safe, right? Question safe.
Yeah, question. That's what I always do. That's got me into trouble as well as the good places. I'm inquisitive. I ask why, and some people don't want to be asked why, because that's the way we've always done it. That's the way it is, the way it will always be. They don't like people coming in asking questions because sometimes they can't answer them. When you actually look at the way that business is structured right now, if you were going to say, I'm going to start business from year 0, you certainly wouldn't have it looking like it is now. And the good thing is that so many new startup businesses are much more democratic in their way. But they start off like that. Think about how Google started and what it is now. And, 2 guys in a garage, tremendous, we are going to change the world. They did change the world. They're now a dead hand on the internet business. So, everything grows to a point, doesn't it? But that's probably for another day. The thing, you start off with the exciting mission and you end up as some terrible oppressor of society.
Well, Colin is not even going to decrepify management. He's just going to get rid of it altogether and let people be self-managing, which actually I agree with.
That happens in professional partnerships, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think
doctors, and yeah.
I was just going to say that, well, it's 9:06. So, I mean, here in my time, I want to just wrap up this whole discussion. We've gone through here, there, everywhere. And I want to wrap it up in just the four things that you said earlier on, right? Which is the very first thing is this. If you are, I mean, if you are running an organization, then I think the first thing that you need to look at is the structure of the organization. Because ultimately, if that structure is keeping people down and keeping people on a transactional or even adversarial state, then that's something that needs to change. People come and say, we need a new organizational culture all the time. But culture is often determined by structure. What do I mean by that? I mean, we actually feel a different organizational culture over these 2 years than we have in the last couple of years. If you've been working in an organization for longer than 2 years, you have felt it. The organizational culture has changed. What changed? Structure changed. People now work from home. That structural change changes the culture. So people say it's really hard to change culture. Well, it's really hard if the structure doesn't change. So that's the first one. If you're starting up a new organization, then think of a different way of doing the organization, a different way of doing business. And as Dennis has rightly pointed out, there are many better ways of doing business out there. I mean, find out if you're starting a new business, find out how it can be done. Right? And if you're not, like if I'm not the person in charge of the whole organization, then what can I do? Well, three very simple things. I think that's what you've said, right? First is if you have power for recruitment, recruit well. Recruit well. Don't recruit people who are worse than me. Don't recruit people who are duplicates of me, but actually recruit people who would come in and challenge. Maybe, like Mark says, I should stop using the word challenge, right? Come in and question the way we do things to improve it and to work better at it. That's the first, right? The second thing is looking at the style of leadership. We talked earlier about social mindfulness, right? How can we get people to align with each other in terms of values, in terms of purpose? What kind of leadership? What kind of leader do you need to be to inspire change, to connect to people, to truly understand your people? And lastly, really is, I think a lot of it is the day to day, right? I mean, are we questioning to those above us? If we are HR, or if even if we're not HR, line manager, sales manager, if we are taking a seat at the table, are we bringing those questions there, or are we, putting our heads down, just working for a pay package and not exhibiting the kind of behaviors that we would like to see? So I think I think that's a really good discussion that we've had. And before we close it up, what is this what is one pearl of wisdom you want to leave with us? And actually, for those of you who are still on the line with us, what are your last comments, right? What if there's one thing that you want to say? Oh, Colin has already started. The corporate tax take over, and that's when the problem starts. Yes, that's Colin's last word. Okay, sure. What is your last word, Dennis?
I think my last word is many last words. My last word is forget, let's try and dismantle the corporate structures and those that thrive in them. Because corporate structures hide a lot of lack of talent. So I think if you're starting a new business today, don't start trying to build a corporate structure. Don't get 10 people and then start hiring VPs and whatever. Keep it loose, keep it involved. And always remember, how you started. When you started, you wanted to do it for something. Make sure that message carries on forever.
And Tiffany has also a last word. Instead of challenge, is really about bringing dialogue back into the organization and back into the fold.
Yeah.
If anybody else wants to put in their last words, put in your last words. In the meantime, I will share next week. So next week, I have another guest who will be coming to share with us, Aman Zaidi, we'll be talking about organizational performance. And what should we be looking at? Should we be looking at weakness, or should we be looking at strength? Like, what actually helps organizational performance better? Improving weaknesses or improving strengths? And yes, thank you very much, Mark, for being here and for all your contributions as well. Thank you to all of you for being here. I
Thanks
really
to
appreciate
you
all
all,
your
yes.
comments. Yes, and
it's,
thanks to Dennis.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me, Serene, and dragging me out of bed at an unearthly hour.
Yes, so Dennis is out of bed at 5:30 in the morning just to be here, right? So I really appreciate Dennis, and I even more appreciate you sticking with me and not breaking up with me, right? I really like this relationship with you. Yes.
Well, I guess at
Okay.
5:30 in the morning, you kind of get me a bit crusty, so maybe I'm on my best form. But thanks to all who've taken part. Really great. Great to read,
Yes.
great to read the stuff, what you're thinking.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so thank you very much, Lena. Thanks to Mad About Jewelry. I would love to know what you do. Yes, and also that Colin agrees. Okay, so thank you so much, all of you. I'll see you guys next week. See ya.
Okay.